Hello, my name is Hans George Campbell. I'm out in my shop again tonight. I'm going to repair this Commodore 64 motherboard here. This is the one that I want to keep from my own personal collection. I've been looking for one of these for a long time. But before I start the repair, I want to talk a little bit about this board. So that's what I'm doing tonight. Alright, the assembly number of this board is 250425, so it's a 425 board. And there's some interesting things to note about this board. This was like one of the last of the bread bin motherboards. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, this board came out in around 1986-87 is when these boards were released, just before the end of the Commodore 64's lifespan. The main thing that was done on this board was, if you remember, okay, the VIC-2 chip was this way, and it had, like, I think 3 integrated circuits here with some other parts around here, okay. Well, Commodore put all, those 3 chips and all these parts into that one chip. That's a MOS chip, and it's a custom chip. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because the components that this chip replaced, they were discrete components, which are easy to find. Whereas that custom chip right there, I suspect, if that ever goes bad, you're going to have a hard time finding a replacement. So yeah, better hope that chip never goes bad. But it makes it more efficient. Have all of this combined into that one chip. Okay, and also Commodore, they changed the orientation of the VIC-2 chip from this way to going this way. And they got rid of the shield. So yeah, I think that was a big mistake, because that shield was an excellent heatsink for the VIC-2 chip. So because these didn't have any shield with the tabs that touch the top of the chips that get hot, whenever you have a 425 board like this and doesn't have any video, one of the things you want to check is the VIC-2 chip. There's a good chance that this chip has overheated and has gone bad. There's a good chance on that. Also, if you're getting a black screen, okay, and it's not the PLA chip, which is this chip here, chances are very good it's one of the memory chips, one or more of these memory chips. Now, another thing to note on the 425 boards, Commodore switched the position of the PLA chip and the SID chip. Okay, on the 407 motherboards, which are the most common of the Commodore 64 boards, the SID chip is here, and the PLA chip is here, directly above it. Okay, but on this the newer 425 board, the SID chip is up here. Okay, and the PLA chip is here. So be very careful not to get these chips mixed up. Pay attention to what motherboard you're working on, because I'm pretty sure if you plug the SID chip into the wrong socket or the PLA chip into the wrong socket, it could cause damage to the chip and possibly the board itself. So yeah, keep that in mind, that these chips are swapped out, the positions of them are changed out depending on the revision of the board, or the assembly number of the board. So keep that in mind. Okay, if you're getting video, but you're not getting color, okay, the chip that's most likely that causes that is your color RAM right here, which I believe is a 2K static memory chip. It's a 2K memory chip. These are your DRAMs, 64K of memory here, okay? But this is your color RAM on this board. Now this chip is also changed. I've seen it like over here on other board revisions, okay? Now I don't know why Commodore didn't put the color RAM right near the video chip, you know, the VIC-2 chip. That would have made more sense to me, you know. But yeah. I did tonight. I bought a really nice, I think it's called a Versa 6-in-1 cartridge for the Commodore 64. It's a really nice cartridge. I'm going to show it to you guys when I get it in next week. I should be getting in like around Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And the cartridge has, it has the dead test cartridge in the ROM. It has the Commodore 64 diagnostic cartridge. It has the Commodore 128 diagnostic cartridge. And it has the Commodore 1541 disk drive diagnostic cartridge. I mean, all these different programs all within one EEPROM. And you switch between the two of them using these switches that are on the board. And it's a really nice board. You know, so yeah, when I get that in, I'll show you guys the cartridge and I'll show you guys how to use it. You know, it's a really interesting cartridge. But yeah, I want to start working on this board. I want to get it fixed. These are high quality NEC memory chips. I worked at NEC and I know we made some nice memory chips. These are some of the best memory chips you can get. Okay, and they're made in Japan. They're very nice memory chips. So if the memory chips are made in Japan by NEC, the chances are very slim that one of these memory chips have gone bad. These are some of the best you can buy. I mean, some of the best chips you can ever have in your board. Okay. Also, the memory chips that are made in Germany, they'll have Germany printed on the chips. Those memory chips rarely ever go bad either. The ones that go bad are the ones that have like a T, like a big T printed on them. Those usually go bad. And I think the ones that were made like in Korea, you know, those go bad. They can go bad, you know. Yeah. So what I'm planning on doing with this board, well, I'll explain all that when I come back from a quick break. Hello, my name is Hans George Campbell. Are you sick and tired of all the dumbasses in the checkout lines using debit and credit? Well, you can become one of the smart ones by switching to cash today. Yes, cash. It's still the best form of payment. It's easy, quick, and so convenient too. Cash. What's in your wallet? Okay. Here's what I'm going to do on this board. The first thing I do is, whether these are good or bad, I don't care. I unsolder the 7812 voltage regulator and the 7805 voltage regulator, and I replace them with brand new voltage regulators. I put in brand new voltage regulators, and I get rid of this old white heatsink compound and put in some Arctic silver, and then I bolt this using a 440 bolt coming in from the bottom with a small washer. And then I have a washer and a lock nut up on top so that I can tighten that without over tightening. And because it's a lock nut, the bolt will never loosen up. It will maintain the tightness on this 7805 voltage regulator without applying too much pressure. If you tighten this up too tight, it can either damage the PCB or it could crack this housing. So yeah. And so that's the first thing I'm going to do, is replace these voltage regulators with brand new ones. Of course, I'm going to recap the board. And that includes the smaller electrolytics over here. I think there's one there, one there. That's another thing I like about this board. There's not that many electrolytic capacitors that need to be replaced. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of them that need to be replaced. So this board, the recapping will go real quick. Now another thing I like to do is I like to remove these. These are 0.22 microfarad disc capacitors, okay? And I like to replace those with these. These are much higher quality. Okay, the name of these capacitors, okay, these are metallized film capacitors. And I usually buy these 100 at a time. They're 0.22 microfarad, 63 volts. So these would be perfect for a Commodore 64 computer. And you'll usually find these capacitors in high-end, like test equipment, high-end audio equipment or video equipment. You'll usually find these really high-quality capacitors, these here, in high-end equipment. So why not use these in your beloved Commodore 64 computer? That's what I'm going to do. They'll look nicer, too. They'll look a lot nicer. But yeah, I'm going to unsolder. I know it's a lot of work, but when I get it done, this board will be a really nice board. But I'm going to replace all these 0.22 microfarad disc capacitors with those capacitors that I just showed you. They're more efficient and they're much higher quality. I'm going to remove this original SID chip. I think this is a 6581, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look real quick just to make sure. I don't want to stir you guys wrong or tell you wrong. Yes, a 6581 chip. To me, those chips, they sound very noisy and obnoxious. I'm going to replace it with a Swin SID, a replica SID chip. They have much better tone. And the games that I like to play, they don't have digitized speech, so I'm not worried about digitized speech, you know. I want really nice sounding music. And those Swin SIDs, those replica SIDs, they have really nice tone. They really do. In fact, I'm going to show you what they look like. So I'll be back shortly. All right, these, I got two of them. These are nano Swin SIDs. Let me put on my magnifier goggles, make sure I read that correctly. Don't want to tell you guys wrong. Yeah, nano Swin SID is what these are. Yeah, these are really nice chips. The nano Swin SIDs. I'm going to replace this 6581 SID chip with one of these because these have really nice tone. They really do. They run cool, and that's one of the reasons why they have better tone than the original SID chips. Because the original SID chip, not only does it have a supply voltage of 5 volts, but it has a secondary supply volts of 12 volts. The newer chips, the 8500 series, have the secondary supply voltage of 9 volts. That's one of the reasons why they run a little bit cooler. And they have better tone because they run cooler. But none of those SID chips compared to the sound of one of these. These SID chips, these Swin SIDs, these are really nice. They sound beautiful. The only bad thing about these chips is that they do not do digitized speech very well. A good example of that is like, you know, the Ghostbusters game, where the guy says, Ghostbusters! You know, that's digitized speech. And that, these Swin SIDs, as far as I know, they don't like digitized speech like that. But lucky for us, most Commodore 64 software, you know, games and stuff, does not have a lot of your digitized speech or digitized sounds. They have actual music created by the synthesizer, you know, the SID chip. So for music, you can't beat these. These have really good tone. Whereas the original SID chip, this one here, it sounds kind of noisy and obnoxious. It really does. So someone that has an ear for music, these SID chips, I've always thought they sounded noisy and tinny and obnoxious. But the Swin SID, these have good tone. They really do. I mean, it's still a noisy piece of shit like the original SID. I mean, I don't know why you people, you know, you like the SID chip so much when the Amiga's sound chip blows the doors off these. Oh yeah, the Amiga's sound capabilities blows the doors off the Commodore 64 SID chip. You know, it really does. But if I'm going to be using a Commodore 64 computer to play some games or to show you my favorite games, I want good music sound, and so I'm going to install one of these Swin SIDs. These are really nice chips. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to replace the capacitors. I'm going to, you know, recap the board. I'm going to replace the 0.22 microfarad capacitors with those higher quality yellow capacitors that I showed you. And I'm going to put the heat sinks on the chips that get hot. Well, I don't have to do it on the Swin SID. But like the processor, the PLA chip, these chips here, okay, put heat sinks on them, and especially the VIC-2 chip. Yeah. I am thinking about building a Commodore 64 tower computer. And I'm thinking about having this board installed in that tower. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Yeah. And so the heat sinks themselves don't really do any good if you don't have air blowing across those heat sinks. In fact, it does more. The heat sinks do more harm than good. They actually trap the heat within the chips because the heat sinks cannot dissipate the heat faster than the chips generate that heat. So in order to make the heat sinks function properly and do their job, you have to have air blowing over those heat sinks. And so I'm going to have a muffin fan blowing air across this entire motherboard to help dissipate that heat from off those chips that get hot. And yeah, I'm going to show you guys how to do all of that. I'm going to show you guys how to install either a 1541 disk drive with the board that goes with it. Another thing you can do is you can install a Commodore 128D motherboard, because the Commodore 128D motherboard has the floppy drive circuitry as part of the motherboard. So if you use one of those motherboards in your tower build, you can plug in a 1571 disk drive right into that board. And then the 1581 drive has a small board that goes with it, so you can have the 1581 drive also installed. You know, so that will work out pretty good too. And I'm going to show you guys how to do all that, how to build a Commodore 64 or a Commodore 128 tower of power, you know. I'm going to show you how to do all that. Now, one of the things that people think, one of the reasons why people think that you can't do that, you can't hook an external, you can't replace the Commodore 64 power supply with like an ATX power supply or AT power supply, it has to do with the PLA chip, okay? Because the PLA chip has an onboard clock, a real-time clock. And it uses the 50 hertz or the 60 hertz coming in from the 9 volts AC. Okay? Well, I'm here to tell you, I did some homework on this chip last night. I actually inspected the data sheet, looked at the data sheet on this chip. Okay, you do not have to use that real-time clock. If you don't care about the correct time or date, then you do not need to supply that 50 hertz or 60 hertz signal to this chip. Just supply the 5 volts. In fact, I look at the VCC on this chip, and it's 5 volts. The maximum is 7 volts, which I don't recommend. Okay, so this is a 5 volt chip. So you guys that think that this chip needs that 9 volts because of the 50 hertz or 60 hertz, you're partially wrong. Because the only reason why it needs that is for the onboard clock. Okay, which the chip can function without it. It doesn't need that. Okay, that's a separate output. So if you don't care about the correct time or date, then you don't have to supply that the 9 volts AC to get that 50 hertz or 60 hertz clock signal, okay? So with that out of the way, there's no more excuses. The only other place where the 9 volts is actually used is here on the cassette port, the data set. But who uses data sets anymore? I don't. You don't. Okay? And the other thing that the 9 volts is mainly used for, it comes in and is converted to 12 volts DC and 5 volts DC. Okay? All right? So if you want to install a motherboard like this into a PC tower case and you want to use an ATX power supply, what you need to do is you need to basically remove all of this stuff that has to do with the power supply. Remove it all. It's not needed. The only thing you want to keep on the motherboard is, of course, your joystick ports. You want to keep those, but remove the fuse, remove the bridge rectifier, remove all these capacitors, they're not needed. Remove the voltage regulators, they're not needed. Remove all of that, okay? And then where you want to tap into the 12 volts coming from your ATX power supply, you want to tap into the output of that 12 volt regulator. And the 5 volts coming from the ATX power supply, you want to tap into the 5 volt output of this 7805 regulator here. And there's another place where you have to, I think it's 5 volts, that you have to feed to the SID chip, I think. It's either the SID chip or the VIC2 chip. I'm not sure which one, so if you know, leave a comment. But the reason why the Commodore engineers added that second 5 volts is they thought that it just goes to that particular chip. They thought that it would cut down on the noise. That's how stupid these engineers were at Commodore. They thought that a dedicated 5 volts to that chip would cut down on the noise. Instead of designing a good circuit to begin with, I mean, Commodore had some really dumbasses working in their engineering department. Trust me, I worked for some of them. I know. Absolute dumbasses. Don't even get me started on Bill Hurd. Oh, I don't even want to get started on him. Absolute dumbass, and he was a real asshole too. Oh yeah, I never liked that guy, ever. But he mainly worked on a Commodore 128 computer, so I didn't have to deal with him that much. But yeah, so yeah, that's how you can get a Commodore 64 motherboard ready to install into a PC tower case. And I'm going to show you guys how to do all that in near future episodes. First thing I want to do, I want to get this motherboard working, because this is the motherboard that I'm going to install into a PC tower case. Probably, but I don't know. This is a rare board, hard to find board. I might actually put this pair back together and just keep it and just use a different board for the C64 tower computer now. Yeah, but I am going to do that. I'm going to make one, build one. I'm going to show you guys how to do it. I might actually use a Commodore 128D motherboard, but the thing is, though, those are hard to find. They're very rare and very expensive. But so if I show you how to do it with a Commodore 64 motherboard and a 1541 disk drive, then all of you can do it, because all of you most likely have a C64 motherboard laying around, a 1541. You just need the disk drive and the board that goes with it. You don't need the case or the power supply or anything else, you know, because the ATX power supply is going to provide the 5 volts and the 12 volts for the 1541 disk drive. And if you want to install a 1581 disk drive, hey, you could do that too. So yeah. So that's what I'm going to do to repair this board and get it running. I'm probably also going to replace this, I'm not sure yet, with a better RF modulator, because that does clean up your signal, your video signal, but I don't know. This board's, I think I remember reading that these 425 boards, they put out some really nice video, so yeah. I'll wait on that. The jury's still out on that. Another thing I want to do, I want to remove this metal part here. I want to carefully unsolder this socket there, the cartridge socket. And, well, when I come back, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Okay. One of the things that I'm planning on doing, I'm going to remove this metal part here. And I'm going to carefully unsolder the cartridge card edge connector. And you're probably wondering, well, Hans, why are you going to do that? Don't you want to use cartridges? Yes, I do. I got a bunch of these. I order them usually 10 at a time or 20 of them at a time. Now, I also have the ones that have right angle leads, like the one that's on the board there. But what I want to do, I have always admired, this is one of the things I've always admired about the Atari 800XL computer and the 600XL computer, how you plug in your cartridge this way is more ergonomic than trying to push it in the back like that. So when I unsolder that cartridge and remove this, I'm going to solder in one like that, where the leads are straight. They're straight, like that. Solder that into the board, right like that. Okay? And then I'm going to take very careful measurements on a 64C, because this board also fit in a 64C. And I'm going to cut out the opening up here on the top, right? And I'm going to use L-shaped plastic strips that you can get from your hobby shop for scratch building. I'm going to very carefully cut it, miter the corners so it looks really nice. I'm actually going to frame that opening. And because it's L-shaped, it'll help guide the cartridge right into that slot. So that this way, I can plug in my slots this way, just like you would on an Atari 600 or 800XL computer. I think it's much more ergonomic that way, to have the cartridge port done like that. And then when I finish doing that, it'll look really nice. It'll look like Commodore did it. Okay, I'm going to spray paint the case with a beautiful matte salmon orange color, which will look very good with the Commodore 64's brown keycaps. It'll look really good. So yeah, and I'm going to show you people how to do that too. Yeah, I'm going to show you people how to do that. But yeah, a lot of neat Commodore 64 videos coming up very soon. Like I said, I ordered a really nice Versa 1 in 6 cartridge that has all the different cartridges that you would use to test Commodore 64 computers, Commodore 128 computers, and 1541 disk drives. That should be here either next Tuesday or Wednesday. And when I get it, we'll continue on the series here. But yeah. Anyway, that's it for this video. I just wanted to show this board, talk about what I'm going to be doing on it, and tell you some interesting things about the 425 board. And yeah, this was one of the later revisions, one of the last revisions of the Commodore 64 motherboard. This is just before Commodore stopped producing and selling the Commodore 64 computer. So yeah, I believe these came out, even though it's got a copyright in 1984, I believe these boards came out around 86, 87 is when these 425s were released. Yeah. But yeah, a lot to talk about, a lot to show you in upcoming videos, so stay tuned for that. If you have not subscribed to this channel, hey, why not? If you like watching videos about vintage computers and retro computer gaming and stuff like that, you know, and you like watching like unboxings and reviews and classic PC videos and stuff like that, I think you're going to love this channel. So why not subscribe? That helps the channel grow, and most importantly, it gives me the incentive to continue creating wonderful content for your viewing pleasure. Well, that's it. My name is Hans George Campbell, and until next time.